Alright guys, so we're going to be covering just an absolutely disgraceful example of journalistic misconduct. Most of you will be familiar, especially as of the last couple weeks post the big announcement of a content creator named F1nnster. You know, the thirst trap posting trans, I believe trans, yes, I confirmed trans, femboy? I think F1nnster calls themselves a femboy sometimes. Gender fluid? I don't keep up with, like, clouded up YouTuber stuff, but F1nnster is one of the few clouded up YouTubers who is not an insufferable conservative, and is in fact a based lefty, gender fluid, gender non-conforming, progressive person who's also quite funny. My introduction to F1nnster was when F1nnster went on to PKA, like, numerous times, because F1nnster's a PKA fan and, like, became famous and then went on there, leveraging said fame. And it's always really hilarious when F1nnster goes on there, because FPS Russia is, like, very clearly a chaser. And so, like, constantly he's flirting with F1nnster through the entire thing. And F1nnster's, like, a fan of FPS Russia, but is also clearly a little weirded out by it. And so it's a mix of, like, finding it funny, but also maybe feigning being uncomfortable by it. It's hard to explain. Regardless, very funny when F1nnster goes on PKA. And I assume if F1nnster didn't like it, they'd stop going on PKA. Regardless, the story is about F1nnster. You see, they recently came out as gender fluid, for all intents and purposes, umbrella definition of trans, okay? And if you fall under that umbrella, then the right is going to hate you. And where transphobia has become the most prevalent in the Western world, it feels like right now, is exactly where F1nnster lives, which is the UK, Britbongerland. And one of the popular publications from Britbongerland, named The Times, recently put out an anti-trans article that wasn't just an anti-trans article. Like, it wasn't just meant to, like, smear trans people and trans healthcare. It's also an article that was written to dox F1nnster. Both a doxing and hit piece article on F1nnster. For no reason. Literally for no reason whatsoever. I believe it might have been taken down by now, and it's now been archived, but the damage has already been done. The information is out there, and there's no stopping the dox from spreading. If someone's dox is made publicly available for even a fraction of a second, it's known now. It is permanently out there. It's just the kind of genie you can't put back in the bottle. You know what I mean? Yeah, the cat's out of the bag, right? This article is absolutely reprehensible. It's titled Puberty Blocker Clinic Accepted £20,000 Donation from Sugar Daddy, quote unquote. And it basically breaks down, like, the most... I'll give, like, a very brief summary of what this hit piece is. It starts off by explaining, basically talking about this puberty blocker clinic, this trans healthcare clinic that does provide puberty blockers to people who are underage, because that's like what puberty blockers are for. They're not hormones. Those are two different things, though conservatives seem to not really recognize that, kind of implied in how they talk about puberty blockers. Regardless, they basically start out by talking about the clinic. And it's just a trans healthcare clinic. It's a good place. And then they get into the fact that it had received a $20,000 donation from what they describe as a male YouTuber with who has paid thousands of pounds to behave like a submissive girl. So that first paragraph from the get-go sets the tone for this. Now, this was written by Adrian Sharat from The Times. Absolutely, fuck them. Fuck them. You know? Wait, no. Tom Ball, I apologize. Adrian Schrott took that picture for the Times that's used as the cover photo. Tom Ball is the guy who wrote the article, apparently. So fuck Tom Ball. There you go. Anyway, that first paragraph kind of sets the tone for this article in that it is extremely out of touch, and while it reports some things technically accurately, the framing is such that it is meant to... Okay. If you were to describe someone who went to the store in a very, like, matter-of-fact way, you would just say, yeah, my friend left the house and went to the store. But if you wanted to frame it in the most negative way possible, despite the fact that the action of leaving the house and going to the store is not a bad thing, you might say, oh yeah, he left the house when I needed him to do something and walked out the door, honestly, forgot his wallet and didn't even wear enough clothes. He's probably gonna be cold as fuck. What a dumbass, you know? Like, basically describing what happened technically accurately, but injecting subjective opinion-based descriptors to add a, while technically not a lie, certainly not an objective telling of just what is the case. Like, as you would hope for it to be. It's just like a very warped, well-poisoned retelling of, like, different aspects of what F1nnster does online, F1nnster's social life, F1nnster's, like, relationships, etc., etc. And I don't want to get into it because, frankly, it feels disrespectful, but where it really gets to be just beyond the pale is where they outright dox F1nnster's, until now, not public full name, as well as home address, like the town where F1nnster lives. And it goes on to, like, speculate about all sorts of things about how, like, what F1nnster does is like some degenerate kink or something like that. And dead names, yes. And then proceeds to provide this claim that because what F1nnster is doing is this, like, weird, degenerate thing, that the fact that F1nnster at one point raised and donated $20,000 to this clinic that otherwise has no real association with F1nnster, that is somehow F1nnster, or that clinic accepting money from, like, a kink sexual weird thing. Now, at no point is an argument made here in which, like, a crime is alleged or something that is seriously wrong or criminal is actually alleged. It is literally all just, here's F1nnster's docs, as well as, like, a very emotional sort of hit piece against F1nnster and this gender-affirming care clinic. It is one of the most disgusting and dishonest pieces of journalistic media I've ever read. Now, I'm not going to read it aloud, like I said, but I'm going to read F1nnster's thread about it. F1nnster goes on to say, really dislike political stuff, but I made this donation without fundraising to help trans adults in the UK who can't afford healthcare. Having said that, I have no problem with puberty blockers being prescribed to people to give people a better life. I'll happily pledge the entire donation amount again, plus what was matched by my viewers at the time, and for the journalist that asked for my quote 3 hours before the article was released. My official quote is "suck my ass." True. Oh yes, this is also part of it. The writer of the article was so malicious in how they behaved, they reached out to F1nnster via an email asking for comment 3 hours before the article was published. Meaning this entire thing would have had to have been written, and then they asked F1nnster for comment, meaning that none of this was based off of anything they learned from, like, an investigation upon talking to or, like, learning about F1nnster, like, for real. It's just all based on, you know, whatever they felt like they thought was true when they saw F1nnster's channel. They basically made up a conspiracy theory and published it as if it was the real news. Some real disgusting behavior here, an unironic fake news moment, you know? I've never been one to cast doubt on mainstream news media, not that the Times is all that mainstream in the first place. It's pretty much a tabloid outlet, but it's really disgusting that this type of media coverage that is basically just doxing and hit pieces on YouTubers that don't even, like... There's a big difference between someone like F1nnster, who's just making entertaining, fun content that's not even, like, politically charged, and, like, a right-wing, or even left-wing, such as myself, political demagogue. Like, this came very out of left field, and was very clearly nothing but a hit piece on a figure that is sort of a rallying force of trans positivity online. Because whether or not you consider F1nnster trans... A lot of trans people considered F1nnster an ally and considered F1nnster sort of like someone who normalized gender non-conforming and sort of like trans ideas in people, if that makes sense. And so this felt like it was an attempt to attack F1nnster to attack what they thought F1nnster stands for, right? Really disgusting work here. Really disgusting.